Welcome back, everyone. We're here at Brilliance Computer Technologies with Mark, and today we're going to be talking about our top common computer issues. So what's one of the most common things that you guys have to deal with here at the store?
Probably the most common issue that anybody ever has is malware. It's viruses and spyware. Most often it's something that you get when you click on a website and then all of a sudden you have a message saying that the RCMP is tracking you, or maybe you should come to our website and buy this special thing. But they don't go away. They're very, very frustrating, and the companies that put them out are very good at keeping them on your machine and annoying you.
And what kind of things do you guys have here? We talked a little bit about viruses. We talked a lot about viruses last week, but sort of for those who didn't see, or as a little refresher, what are the types of things you recommend to prevent getting malware on your computer?
Don't click on things. Almost all ads are going to be a problem, but sometimes you're going to get them anyways, even if you're really, really diligent, or somebody else might be on your machine and you don't realize. If you've got there's all sorts of free programs that are very, very good at getting rid of them. Programs like Malwarebytes, Combo Fix is another one that's very good. As long as you're careful and run like a little malware scan maybe every few months, usually that kind of thing can be dealt with pretty well.
Awesome. So now, what is the second most common computer issue you guys see here at the store?
There's a bunch of them that come in together. Commonly, power supplies fail on a regular basis, both on laptops and on desktops.
Okay.
On laptops, the problem with power supplies is they get pulled out. Your dog runs by and pulls the thing off the table and it hits the ground and breaks the connection on the inside of the laptop. Or the brick itself will fail. And people don't necessarily realize that the brick has failed. They just think their computer's gone dead because all of a sudden it just turns off.
Right.
And then it's dead at that point.
Are there things that you can recommend that people do before having something like that happen that sort of will prevent those issues from coming up?
Nope.
No.
There is very little you can do
Just
to stop
deal
the
with
power
it, I
supply.
suppose.
The two things that happen a lot is if your computer's not plugged into a battery backup, and there's any kind of power disruption, sometimes it will almost capture it inside the power supply.
Okay.
And even if your computer's off, they're still kind of on, kind of like a VCR or a DVD player, like they're always powered slightly. If you unplug it from the wall and ignore it for about 15 minutes, commonly they'll reset themselves and come back on.
Oh, cool.
With laptops, sometimes you also have to pop the battery out of them in order to get them to completely drain out. But then you put it back together and they're good to go. It's not uncommon for people to bring in a machine, tell us that it's dead, and we'll just immediately take it out back, plug it in, and it works.
Wow.
And it's just the drive over here is enough time for it to have reset itself.
So now, if, let's say, the power source has gone dead, what do you guys offer in terms of replacing or fixing?
Power supplies in most machines are easily done. For laptops, there's universals. They're generally under $50 to get a laptop back up and running. Desktops, power supplies usually start around $25. Like it's not a deal breaker for a machine if the power supply fails.
Great. Just don't think your computer is actually dead if it's just the power supply.
Yes, yeah.
Good to know. What's number 3?
Number 3 would be probably hard drives.
Hard drives?
The problem with hard drives, that again spans laptops and desktops. Laptops, hard drives fail fairly commonly because you're banging them around. You put them in a bag, you plunk them around. Laptop drives, the laptops themselves try to minimize shock, but they still take hits. And of course, what happens if the drive fails completely, everything you have is gone. What happens more commonly is they develop bad spots. So the laptops get really, really slow, or the desktops get really, really slow. You're trying to run a program and it just hangs forever. And that's usually an indicator that the hard drive is going bad.
So if it's just a spot on the hard drive as opposed to the whole thing failing, is that something that can be repaired?
They say it can be repaired. We don't repair them.
No.
No. As a general rule, they're like apples. Once they start to go bad, they just go bad.
So you would recommend then if someone had something like that going wrong, as opposed to trying to fix it and play catch up, just replace the whole...
Replace the drive. And if it's not too bad, usually we can just clone the entire drive to a replacement drive. So nothing changes, all your programs stay the same, you just have a new drive.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so number 4 for your big issues.
Number 4 would probably be motherboards.
Okay, now you're gonna have to explain what a motherboard is because I have no idea.
That's fair. If you look at almost any computer, if you open up the side of a computer and there's that big green or board in there with all that stuff hanging off of it, that's the motherboard.
Okay.
And what happens is a lot of boards, and this actually affects laptops, desktops, TVs. It happens on virtually everything. There's little capacitors on these boards. They look like little cans.
Okay.
And they swell. They're commonly badly made. There's a bunch of companies that make them cheaply. When they fail, the machine starts to do weird things. So it might get really, really slow. It might start to crash. It might work absolutely perfectly fine, and then one day is completely stone dead.
So what can you do with that?
You replace it.
So is replacing, because the motherboard is sort of like the brain of your computer, right?
It's what everything plugs into.
So if you have to replace the motherboard, how does that affect the functionality of your computer?
On desktops, it's not usually a big deal because you can, as long as it's, if you're unlucky enough to have it fail, fairly quickly upon buying it, then you can usually just buy another one that's somewhat similar. And then all your components will just plug right into it and go.
Okay.
If the machine's older and it fails, then the hard drive can be saved, the video card and stuff like that usually can be saved. Sometimes the RAM can, sometimes you have to buy a new RAM. But a lot of those components, like anything that you can't use, usually can be bought back as well, so they're not like wasted.
Okay. And that's something you guys can do here?
Yep. On a laptop, there's pretty much nothing you can do, and with monitors and stuff, there's not much you can do with them either. With monitors, a symptom of bad capacitors or a bad motherboard is the monitor doesn't turn on, or it turns on and clicks on and off a bunch. That happens quite commonly.
So monitors have motherboards in them as well?
They have, the motherboard is the main circuit board in a computer, but in a monitor, they still have circuit boards.
Okay. I apparently know nothing about motherboards. So that brings us to our 5th common issue that you guys see here at Brilliance Computer Technologies. What would that be?
That would likely be broken screens.
Right.
On
so
laptops.
What is a big cause of broken screens on laptops?
Pencils.
Really?
Yeah,
Pencils?
Absolutely. Pencils and pens. They murder them like crazy because...
I would have thought it'd been like slamming down, because I'm pretty...
But you slam them down on a pencil.
Well, no, I don't.
You might not.
But that's what people do.
Yeah, well, the screens themselves
okay.
are usually pretty tough, and they're built obviously to close flat. But what happens is people are working on them, and they leave something on the keyboard on the laptop, and then they close the screen on it.
That sounds awful.
And the end.
So is that anything from like a tiny little pixel to like a big crack?
It's usually, it almost always is pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
When they break badly.
Okay.
And they break in such a way that you don't go, oh, I can probably work around this. You go, wow, this is done.
So you can replace things like that here?
Yep.
What about, so that was for laptops, what about like a desktop monitor? Are those replaceable as well?
Monitors tend not to break because of course you're going to have to like pull it off your desk before you break those.
Right.
They're not really fixable either.
Okay.
Right? But they're less expensive as well, so people just buy another one.
That's true. I accidentally tripped over a cord and knocked one down once and just replaced it.
Yes.
But I was also slightly embarrassed to admit that I had done that, so I don't think I would have asked to replace it anyway.
With laptops, most of the screens are replaceable for around $100 to $150. If you're really unlucky, some of them can be $300 or $400.
Oh wow. What about like tiny little pixels? What could cause that happening on your computer?
It doesn't happen very much anymore,
No?
but it does still happen. Sometimes the screens, it's just a manufacturing defect.
Okay.
Most laptops nowadays and most desktop monitors come with a 0 dead pixel warranty. So they expect that even though there's 3 or 4 million pixels on the screen, depending on your screen, none of them will be bad.
Okay.
Right? If they do go bad, sometimes you can kind of poke them.
Really?
Yes.
You just give it a little nudge?
Just kind of scratch at it a little bit, and you can sometimes get them to come back to life. There's some programs out there that used to be around called dead pixel fixers that would just flash repeated colors on that one pixel. You'd moved it to the bad spot and just let it sit there and flash, and it would try to activate the pixel.
That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I don't think it worked very often, but people claimed it did.
So I have an extra question for you. I know it's not on your list, so I'm going to surprise it with you. But I have sticky keys on my keyboard. Tell me how to fix my sticky keys, please.
If they're just sticky, that's actually very, very common because people eat over keyboards.
I eat over my keyboard.
Laptops are much, much harder to deal with than desktops.
Okay.
Because desktops, keyboards are like $15. So if it gets truly too gross to deal with, you just go buy another one. Or
of course.
You can also unplug it and run rubbing alcohol into them. Preferably.
This is like a desktop one, not like a laptop.
On a desktop one.
Okay.
On a laptop one, you can still use something like isopropyl alcohol, but you have to be careful.
Okay.
You have to be very careful with it because you do not want to, A, you can't have the machine on.
Right.
And B, you don't want to drip anything into it that hits the motherboard inside.
Right, that would be bad.
That would be spectacularly bad.
So could I bring it to you guys and get you to fix it for me?
Most laptop keyboards actually can be removed.
Okay.
And if you're feeling adventurous, you can pop them out and then clean them. You can often do a pretty good job of cleaning, not sticky keys, but the crud that builds up in them just with a can of compressed air.
Okay. I'm not sure if my sticky keys are from overuse or from like some dust or something that got in there, so I'll have to give that a careful try.
Tragically, it's almost never overuse.
Shoot.
It's crud. Depending on the machine, you can usually, there's a cable that connects the keyboard to the laptop. So if you can pop the keyboard out, sometimes there's a few screws on the bottom, and lift it out sideways, then you can, if you're feeling brave, very carefully run some isopropyl alcohol down along the edge, around where the keys are bad.
Awesome.
If you put too much down there, let it dry out. That's why you use rubbing alcohol or isopropyl alcohol.
So now, what would be the most catastrophic issue you ever saw come in here?
In terms of catastrophic things, when power supplies fail, most of the time when a power supply fails, it just fails. You put a new one in and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Sometimes when the power supply fails, they fail in such a way that because what the power supply is doing is it's taking the 120 volts from the wall and converting it into 12 volts DC. Sometimes they fail in such a way that it basically drops the whole 120 volts right into the machine and fries everything. Like the fans go.
Did you see like a melted something?
Oh yeah, like things will, like the fans will be melted. The hard drives, like nothing works in the machine. You basically just have a metal box and everything else is dead.
Wow.
Right? That doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
Well, once again, thank you so much for sharing your common issues with us. Do you want to give your shout outs for your store, how everyone can get in contact with you if they need some assistance?
We're at 3700 Kempt Road in Halifax. Phone number is 902-453-0050, or we're on the web, of course, at www.brillcom.com.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That wraps up this week's episode of Tech Up. Don't forget to leave your comments and suggestions on Facebook and Twitter. Tell us what you think and suggest some apps for our recap segment. I'm Sarah Ingram, and we'll see you next time.